That morning, the Pentagon thought it was a routine drug bust. 6 Venezuelan narco-subs creeping through the Caribbean, each loaded with enough cocaine and fentanyl to devastate American cities. Admirals wanted quick results. Politicians wanted headlines. The order was simple: sink them all, no survivors. But Captain Alexandra Lex Morgan saw what no one else would admit. These weren't cartel soldiers. Intercepted signals spoke of fishing nets, of debts, of sick children. She knew the truth. The cartels were forcing desperate civilians into suicide runs, using fathers as disposable decoys, while the real killers waited behind them. If she followed protocol, dozens would die for nothing, and the cartels would win. If she defied orders, she risked her career, her submarine, and maybe a war with Venezuela. In that impossible moment, Lex made a choice. One maneuver so reckless, so unprecedented, it could either save lives or trigger a Caribbean crisis. What happened next would turn a routine interdiction into the largest cartel takedown in Caribbean history, and prove that sometimes the bravest act is refusing to kill. That morning, nobody knew that Captain Alexandra Lex Morgan's single decision would not only save lives, but prevent a war that could have devastated the entire Caribbean region. The Pentagon's conference room 2A buzzed with tension as classified satellite images filled the massive screen. 6 semi-submersible vessels, barely visible above the waterline, moved in perfect formation through international waters south of the Dominican Republic. These weren't ordinary drug boats, they were sophisticated narco-subs, each carrying enough cocaine and fentanyl to poison entire American cities. Admiral Richard Hawkins, Southcom commander, leaned back in his leather chair with visible frustration. "Captain Morgan, I appreciate your expertise in submarine operations, but this is a surface interdiction mission. We have 3 destroyers and Coast Guard assets already positioned. Your submarine would be overkill." Lex Morgan stood at attention, her emerald eyes fixed on the satellite feeds. As the newly appointed Director of Submarine Strategic Operations, she'd been analyzing cartel trafficking patterns for months. But what she'd discovered in the intelligence analysis would shock everyone in this room. "Sir, with respect, our pattern analysis suggests these may not be typical cartel operatives," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to reveal. Signal intercepts show they're transporting narcotics," interrupted General Patricia Sterling, her tone dismissive. "We've been striking these vessels successfully for weeks. USS Sampson can handle 6 more boats." But Lex had studied dozens of interdiction reports. The communications patterns, the vessel construction, the operational behaviors, none of it matched hardened cartel soldiers. And here's the shocking part. Captain Michael Torres, Pentagon Drug Interdiction Coordinator, pulled up additional footage. "President Trump's policy is clear. Destroy the vessels, eliminate the threat. We've already sunk 3 similar boats this month." "That's exactly the problem," Lex interjected, stepping closer to the screen. "Captain, our intelligence analysis from the past 6 months shows a disturbing pattern. The crews we've been killing aren't matching cartel soldier profiles." The room fell silent. Secretary Douglas Brennan cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Captain Morgan, what exactly are you suggesting?" "Sir, I'm suggesting we're killing the wrong people." But what happened next changed everything. Lex activated her tablet displaying comparative intelligence analysis. "Gentlemen, look at the communication intercepts. The language patterns don't match military cartel operations. They're civilians. Fishing terminology, family concerns, desperate conversations about money and medicine." "Even if that's circumstantially true, Captain," Admiral Hawkins frowned, "they're still enemy combatants the moment they enter these waters with illegal narcotics." "Are they?" Lex challenged. "Our past operations show cartels have evolved. They don't risk their own soldiers anymore. They coerce civilians, force fishermen into drug runs by threatening their families. We've documented this pattern in 43 previous cases, but we keep killing them before we can gather intelligence." The tension in the room was palpable, but the real shock was still coming. General Sterling stood abruptly. "Captain Morgan, I don't think you understand the political pressure we're under. The president expects results, not theories about the moral complexity of drug interdiction." "Then let me give you results, ma'am." Lex activated her secure tablet, displaying detailed submarine tactical plans. "USS Leviathan can intercept these vessels without firing a shot. We surface directly beneath them, forcing them to stop without destroying evidence or killing potentially innocent people." Captain Torres scoffed. "Surface beneath them? That's the most ridiculous tactical suggestion I've heard in 20 years. You'd risk a multi-billion-dollar submarine for 6 drug boats. But Lex had studied these semi-submersibles for months. She knew their construction, their vulnerabilities, their operational patterns. And what she was about to propose would either save lives or end her career forever. Sir, these vessels have a critical design flaw. They're essentially floating barely above the surface, maintained by precise ballast systems. If USS Leviathan surfaces directly beneath one, the displacement wave forces them to surface completely, dead in the water, but intact. Crews alive for interrogation. Admiral Hawkins leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. Explain. We coordinate with Coast Guard assets for simultaneous interdiction. The submarine surfaces beneath the lead vessel, forcing it up. Coast Guard boards while the crew is disoriented, but alive. Meanwhile, the other 5 boats, seeing their lead vessel captured intact, surrender rather than face destruction. We get the drugs, we get intelligence, and we might discover we're fighting victims instead of villains. Secretary Brennan frowned. And if they don't surrender, then we have USS Sampson's missiles as backup. But we try the non-lethal approach first, because if I'm right, and these are coerced civilians, we're not just killing drug smugglers, we're doing the cartel's work for them. The room erupted in arguments, but Admiral Hawkins raised his hand for silence. What he said next stunned everyone. Captain Morgan, your plan is highly irregular and, frankly, sounds impossible. But given the questions being raised about civilian casualties in our recent operations, I'm willing to authorize a trial run. If you're wrong, and these are hardened cartel soldiers, the responsibility is yours. General Sterling's face flushed red. Admiral, this is madness. We're risking operational security based on communication pattern analysis. No, General. We're risking operational security to make sure we're not becoming the monsters we're fighting, Lex replied firmly. But the most incredible part was still ahead. 3 hours later, USS Leviathan cut through Caribbean waters at periscope depth, tracking the 6 semi-submersibles through passive sonar. Commander Thomas Ashford, her executive officer, stood beside Lex in the control room, both studying the tactical display. Captain, I've been with you through impossible missions before, but this… Ashford shook his head. Surfacing beneath a semi-submersible without crushing it requires precision we've never attempted. Senior Chief Petty Officer Daniel Westbrook, the chief of the boat, monitored the sonar readings. Ma'am, we're getting clear acoustic signatures on all 6 targets. Lead vessel is approximately 40 feet long, drawing maybe 3 feet of water. Lieutenant Jennifer Crenshaw plotted the intercept course. Captain, at our current speed and angle, we can surface directly beneath the lead boat in 14 minutes. Sonar technician First Class Ryan Curtis suddenly tensed. Captain, I'm picking up additional acoustic signatures approaching from the south. It's a Venezuelan Navy frigate moving to intercept. The tactical situation had just become infinitely more complex. If a Venezuelan warship engaged USS Leviathan in international waters, the incident could escalate into a full diplomatic crisis, or worse. Commander Ashford looked grim. Ma'am, we have approximately 8 minutes before that frigate reaches engagement range. USS Sampson is 20 miles north, but if shooting starts, it becomes an international incident, Lex finished. Exactly what the cartels want, chaos that covers their operations. But then she realized something that changed the entire mission. Curtis analyzed those Venezuelan frigate communications. Are they coordinating with the semi-submersibles? Curtis worked frantically at his console. Negative, ma'am. In fact, wait. The frigate is broadcasting warnings to the semi-submersibles to return to Venezuelan waters immediately. They're trying to stop the drug run too, Lex breathed. The Venezuelan Navy is chasing the same boats we are. This revelation transformed everything. Instead of a simple interdiction, they now faced a 3-way maritime crisis involving American forces, Venezuelan Navy, and desperate civilians caught between them. Admiral Hawkins's voice crackled over secure communications. Leviathan, be advised, USS Sampson has Venezuelan frigate on radar. You are authorized to abort mission if situation escalates. But Lex had a better idea, one so audacious it would either prevent an international incident or cause one. Admiral, request permission for coordinated operation with Venezuelan frigate. Both our nations want to stop these drugs from reaching anywhere. Negative, Captain. We don't coordinate with Venezuelan military assets under current policy. Sir, with respect, maybe it's time we started. If we're both chasing the same criminals, fighting each other only helps the cartels." The next few minutes would determine whether Lex's impossible plan would work, or whether she'd just triggered a Caribbean crisis. She opened a channel on International Maritime Frequency. In fluent Spanish, she transmitted, "Venezuelan Navy vessel, this is USS Leviathan. We are conducting interdiction of narcotics traffickers. Propose coordinated operation to prevent loss of life." The response came immediately, tense but professional. "American submarine, this is frigate Independencia. These vessels departed from Venezuelan territory. This is our jurisdiction. Captain, these vessels are in international waters carrying narcotics bound for American shores. But we share your concern for minimizing casualties. Propose joint operation. We secure vessels non-lethally. You handle your nationals. We document contraband." A long pause. Then, "American captain, your proposal is unprecedented. But if you can guarantee no Venezuelan nationals are killed, we will coordinate. How do you capture drug boats without destroying them?" What happened next was unprecedented in Caribbean naval history. USS Leviathan positioned beneath the lead semi-submersible while the Venezuelan frigate approached from the south. As Lex had calculated, the submarine's displacement wave forced the small vessel to surface completely, its crew scrambling as water poured into their compromised ballast tanks. "Surface! Emergency blow," Lex commanded. USS Leviathan breached like a metal whale directly beneath the narco-sub, lifting it partially out of the water. The semi-submersible's crew, terrified but unharmed, immediately raised their hands in surrender. Meanwhile, seeing their lead boat captured and both a submarine and a Venezuelan frigate closing rapidly, the other 5 semi-submersibles cut their engines and began broadcasting surrender signals. Coast Guard Commander Lisa Garrett, monitoring from USS Sampson, transmitted in amazement. "Leviathan, that was actually impossible. How did you calculate the displacement wouldn't crush them?" "Calculated risk, Commander. These boats are designed to handle rough seas. A controlled submarine surfacing creates less stress than a Caribbean storm." But the most shocking moment came when the first crew member was brought aboard USS Leviathan. Miguel Vargas, the lead operator, was a weathered man in his mid-30s, clearly a fisherman, not a soldier. Through the interpreter, he looked at Lex with desperate eyes. "Please, I never wanted this. They said if I don't make this run, my daughter dies. She needs medicine. She's only 8 years old. She has leukemia. I'm just a fisherman. I don't know anything about drugs. Please." He broke down completely, and Lex felt her tactical instincts confirmed. These weren't hardened criminals. They were desperate fathers, coerced into risking their lives. "Miguel," Lex said gently through the translator, "your daughter will get her medicine. But you need to help us stop the people who threatened her." What Miguel revealed next exposed the entire cartel operation. "Captain, there are 12 more boats coming tomorrow night. But they're different. Those boats have real cartel soldiers, real weapons. They use people like me as, how do you say, decoys. We go first. You Americans kill us, waste your missiles. Then the real boats come through while you reload." The tactical picture suddenly became clear. The semi-submersibles they'd just captured were diversions. The real drug fleet was still coming, armed and dangerous, using desperate fishermen as human shields to draw American fire away from their actual operations. "Admiral Hawkins, we have a situation," Lex transmitted to Pentagon. "These 6 boats were just the opening move. The real fleet is armed and inbound tomorrow, and we only know because we captured crews alive instead of killing them." Admiral Hawkins's response was immediate. "Captain, how many boats in the main fleet?" 12, sir. Armed cartel soldiers, military-grade weapons, using our previous strikes as cover for their timing." Secretary Brennan's voice came through. "Captain Morgan, how did we get this intelligence?" "Because, Mr. Secretary, when you save lives instead of taking them, sometimes people are willing to talk. Miguel Vargas just gave us the entire cartel operation schedule, but only because his daughter's life isn't forfeit anymore." The intelligence Miguel and the other fishermen provided led to the largest drug interdiction in Caribbean history. 12 heavily armed cartel submarines intercepted before they could reach international waters. 43 cartel soldiers captured, 16 tons of cocaine and fentanyl seized, and 0 civilian casualties. But none of that would have been possible without Lex's decision to risk everything on an impossible submarine maneuver that put human life before military protocol. 3 weeks later, in the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes, Lex received the Navy Distinguished Service Medal for innovative tactics that prevented international incident while securing unprecedented intelligence leading to major cartel network disruption. But the moment that meant the most came afterward, when she received a handwritten letter from Venezuela. Sofia Vargas, now receiving leukemia treatment funded by a joint U.S.-Venezuelan humanitarian program, had drawn a picture of a submarine with "Thank you, Captain Lex" written in crayon across the hull. Miguel, granted asylum and now working with a joint anti-cartel task force, wrote, "Captain Morgan, you didn't just save my life that day. You saved my soul. For months, I thought America wanted people like me dead. You showed me that America still believes in mercy. Because of you, 47 fishermen from my village came forward with information. 47. We stopped 63 drug runs in 6 months, not because you destroyed us, but because you gave us a reason to trust you." Sometimes the most impossible missions aren't about winning wars. They're about remembering why wars are worth fighting in the first place. Admiral Hawkins approached Lex at the ceremony. "Captain, your methods were unorthodox. Your tactical approach was reckless, and your diplomatic improvisation was completely outside protocol." Lex braced herself for criticism. "It was also," the Admiral continued with a slight smile, "exactly what we needed. Congratulations on your promotion to Captain and your new assignment as Director of International Humanitarian Maritime Operations. Apparently, Washington thinks we need more of your particular brand of impossible." 6 months later, Lex found herself back in Conference Room 2A. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Representatives from 12 nations sat around the expanded table, all wanting to learn about the Morgan Protocol, the humanitarian submarine interdiction technique that had revolutionized maritime law enforcement. Captain James Morrison from USS Sampson had become one of her strongest advocates. Ladies and gentlemen, what Captain Morgan achieved wasn't just tactical innovation, it was a complete paradigm shift. We went from destroying evidence and killing suspects to capturing intact operations and gathering unprecedented intelligence. Admiral François Dubois of the French Navy leaned forward intently. "Captain Morgan, our forces face similar challenges in the Mediterranean with refugee boats that may also carry contraband. Your non-lethal approach could save hundreds of lives, but what Lex revealed next shocked the international maritime community. Admiral Dubois, the technique works because it exploits basic physics that cartels don't understand. Semi-submersibles maintain surface position through precise buoyancy calculations. When a submarine creates controlled displacement directly beneath them, they have no choice but to surface completely. It's like forcing a cork to the surface." Commander Lisa Garrett, now assigned to the Pentagon's new Humanitarian Interdiction Division, added crucial details. "The key is timing and positioning. Too fast and you crush the vessel. Too slow and they escape. It requires submarine crews trained in precision surfacing techniques that weren't even in our manuals 6 months ago." British Royal Navy Captain George Montgomery studied the tactical displays. "Captain Morgan, our intelligence suggests cartels are already adapting, building deeper draft vessels to counter your technique." Lex smiled grimly. "They are. Which is why we're staying ahead of them." She activated classified footage that made everyone in the room lean forward. The screen showed USS Leviathan's most recent mission, 3 new cartel submarines built specifically to counter the Morgan Protocol, being intercepted through coordinated multi-submarine operations. These new boats drew 8 feet of water instead of 3. Standard displacement wouldn't work. So we adapted. Triple submarine coordination, creating controlled underwater currents that forced them to choose between surfacing and losing power completely. Triple submarine coordination. Captain Montgomery looked stunned. "The precision required is exactly what our crews are now trained for," Lex finished. "We're not just intercepting drugs anymore. We're staying ahead of cartel innovation at every turn." But the most incredible revelation came from Miguel Vargas himself. Now serving as a consultant to the Venezuelan-American Maritime Cooperation Initiative, his transformation was remarkable, from desperate fisherman to legitimate maritime security advisor. "Captains and admirals," Miguel began in carefully practiced English, "I want to tell you what Captain Morgan's decision meant to people like me. When she chose to save lives instead of taking them, she didn't just capture 6 boats. She captured the hearts of my community. In 6 months, because we trusted her, we stopped 63 cartel operations before they started, not because you destroyed us, but because we chose to work with you." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Lex's impossible submarine maneuver had done more than save 6 boats. It had fundamentally changed the relationship between American forces and Caribbean communities. Admiral Hawkins stood. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to announce that Captain Morgan has been selected to head the new International Humanitarian Maritime Operations Center. 12 nations have committed submarines and personnel to be trained in these techniques." As Lex walked through the Pentagon halls later toward her new office, she found a surprise on her desk, a handmade model of USS Leviathan, crafted from wood and painted with remarkable detail. The attached note, written in a child's handwriting, read, "Par Capitana Lex from Sofia Vargas. Someday I will captain a submarine like you and save people too. Gracias for saving my papa and teaching me that impossible is just another word for not yet." That night, as Lex reviewed training curricula for 12 international submarine crews, she smiled knowing that the next generation of maritime officers would learn the Morgan Protocol as standard procedure. What had once been impossible was now simply how the job got done. And somewhere in Venezuela, a little girl was growing up, believing that submarines could be tools of mercy as well as instruments of war, because one captain had been willing to risk everything to prove that saving lives was more powerful than taking them.